who is associate professor at the University of Milano Bicocca in Italy, and Nicola Del Maschio, who is assistant professor at the University Hospital San Raffaele, also in Milan, in Italy. So Simone and Nicola have done very interesting neural work on multilingualism. So they looked at the brain of multilinguals, how multilinguals process languages, for example, but also from a structural point of view, how the brain may or may not change depending on how many languages do you speak. I'm not going to explain the rest of your research. You will tell us about it. And yes, so what else did I want to say? We're running a bit late, but don't worry. You just give your talk as you planned it, and then probably we'll catch up later on during the day. Okay, so Simone and Nicola, would you like to share your slides?
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear very well.
Okay, so I'll share my screen. Let's see if it works.
Yes, we can see the slides.
Yes, but I can't. So give me. All right. So, well, first we'd like to thank you, Francesca, team, and Derek for organizing this this conference and for inviting me and Simone to participate with the talk. We're going to deliver this talk jointly, so I'll speak first, and then Simone will take the floor, and then I will make a couple of final remarks. The basic idea of this presentation is to talk to you a little bit about the research we've been doing in recent years on bilingualism, and in particular about the consequences of bilingual experience on brain and behavior, with some mention of our personal experience as bilingual researchers, and with a focus on the conceptualization of bilingualism that has informed our studies recently. This is us. This is me and Simone. We were born and raised in Italy, and we continue to live and work in Italy, where we mostly speak standard Italian, I would say. I would also say that our academic careers acted as triggers for us to learn foreign languages, and English in particular, more than the other way around. That is, it's not that we became interested in studying language and bilingualism because we were multilinguals or polyglots. We had to perfect a foreign language, such as English, to access scientific knowledge and to disseminate our findings on language and bilingualism, just like today, for instance, because English is the lingua franca of scientific research. So overall, even though we've always been interested in language functioning, we became bilingual mainly by necessity, as we had to use English to do what we like to do. Now, the Italian's knowledge of a foreign language such as English is variable, and it is conditional upon a number of factors such as age and education. Now, Italy is very rich in terms of linguistic diversity. It has arguably the greatest diversity of regional and minority languages in Western Europe. And full bilingualism is legally granted to 3 national minorities whose native language is German in Trentino, Alto Adige, Slovene in Friuli Venezia Giulia, and French in the Aosta Valley. These are 3 geographical regions in northern Italy. Now, in terms of foreign language knowledge, around the 65% of working age adults in Italy, they report that they know at least 1 foreign language other than the native. In Europe, this percentage is a little bit higher, is around 75%. This proportion varies as a function of education, of course, but also according to the age of the respondents, and tends to decrease with increasing age. Now, as you may notice from the slide, the generation gap is more pronounced among those EU member states that report a relatively low percentage of the population that knows at least one foreign language, including Italy. In terms of foreign language skills, this is the distribution of the level of proficiency for the best known foreign language in Europe among EU citizens. The percentage of the Italian working age population who declares a high command, high proficiency of the best known foreign language is around 11%. Apparently one of the lowest in Europe. However, at least in our experience, especially among younger people, the knowledge of a foreign language such as English is largely variable. And variability is also what seems to emerge overall from this Eurostat data, which suggests that bilingualism is actually a complex and a dynamic object. As Professor Sorace already mentioned, a bilingual may achieve different levels of proficiency in the two languages, may use languages in different contexts, may learn a new language or as a result of various demands, education, immigration, or other circumstances. So by this definition, a bilingual is not necessarily someone who has acquired both languages from birth or in early life, but also one who learns a foreign language later in life and who attains variable levels of proficiency. Now, the experimental research on bilingualism that we are presenting today aims to account for this variability. That is, rather than framing bilingualism as a unitary variable or classifying speakers simply as bilinguals or monolinguals in monolithic categories, we aim to investigate the consequences of bilingualism as a continuous phenomenon made of different experiential components. Basically, this is a perspective that takes into account the extent to which individuals vary as bilinguals along multiple dimensions. Now, obviously, bilingualism is made possible by the brain capacity to acquire and use and control multiple languages. Now, with respect to monolingual speakers, bilinguals, they recruit additional brain areas that support the control of multiple languages. That is, they use the same areas as monolinguals for language processing, but they also recruit areas that help them keep the two languages separated to avoid confusion, to avoid potential cross-linguistic intrusions, to select one language or the other in each given communicative situation, and also to switch between languages if necessary. As you can see from the right side of the slide, the language control network of bilinguals also involves structures deep within the brain that are not typically associated with the production, the comprehension of language in monolinguals. Now, with this in mind, in the two studies I'm going to present, we ask whether being bilinguals gives rise to neurocognitive adaptations, that is, affects the structure and function of the brain. And most importantly, whether the bilingual brain is differentially affected by individual differences along various dimensions of bilingual experience. Now, first, we focused on brain anatomy and specifically on the physical pathways that connect different parts of the brain. We can reconstruct these pathways and their characteristics. Let's say how well brain areas are connected in vivo, that is in the intact living brain, with MRI, with magnetic resonance imaging and particular imaging techniques. We enrolled 50 Italian English bilinguals. Age range was 18-38, so young adults. We collected imaging data and data about the bilingual language background of our subjects. And we tested whether bilingual experience affects how well brain areas are connected and communicate with each other across the whole brain, the entire brain. As I've mentioned, we didn't focus on a single linguistic variable, but on the specific effects of multiple variables, all measured as continuous variables. That is specifically the age of acquisition of the second language, the proficiency attained in the second language, and the amount of exposure to the second language. Now, we found that rather than the age of acquisition of the second language or the proficiency attained in that language, the time spent using the second language modulates the efficiency of brain connections, that is how well brain areas communicate with each other, in specific parts of the network that underpins bilingual language control. These parts of the language network, of the language control network, sorry, are highlighted in red in the slide's figure. And as you can notice, are located in the frontal aspects of the brain. These aspects, they support attention, monitoring, inhibition, and problem solving. In a second study, we didn't focus anymore on brain anatomy, as in the latter case, on the physical connections between different parts of the brain, but rather on brain function, on brain activity. Specifically, we focused on how even distant regions of a bilingual's brain, they talk to each other, they resonate with each other without necessarily being physically connected. You have to imagine pathways of communication between regions that are functionally related to each other and whose activity is spontaneous, that is not elicited by particular tasks. We can reconstruct these pathways of communication as well as their features, that is how strongly brain areas are connected in terms of function and activity, again with particular imaging techniques. Similarly to the previous study, we enrolled a group of Italian English bilinguals, and we tested the effects of age of acquisition, proficiency, and use or exposure, all measured as continuous variables, on this time, functional connectivity of both the language and the control networks of our participants. So I won't go into the details of the results of the study, but the key finding is that all the three variables considered, that is age of acquisition, proficiency, and exposure use, modulated the functional connections of both the language and the control networks of our bilingual participants. And these effects were driven both by the specific contribution of each variable as well as by their interaction. Okay, so they joint action. So overall, the results of these two studies suggest that a cognitively stimulating activity such as bilingualism, such as being bilingual, even in adult participants, is able to modulate both the anatomical and the functional organization of the brain. Crucially, the brain seems to be differentially sensitive to the variable language experiences of bilingual speakers. And we also tested the consequences of a similar conceptualization of bilingualism that is as a multi-componential and continuous construct on behavior and specifically on decision making. So I'll pass the floor to Simone and then I'll make a couple of final remarks.
Thanks.
So now I think
would you stop sharing the screen? So
yes.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
Did I stop? Did I stop sharing? Can you share yours?
No, you should stop sharing your screen before I can do it.
Yeah, so Nicola, you're still sharing?
Yeah.
The screen? Yeah,
Okay.
great.
All right. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Now it works.
Perfect.
Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just to add a short biographical note, always related with bilingualism. Nicola and I are in two different cities because I spend half life in Milan and half life in Trentino Alto Adige, another region in which especially old people speak, most of old people speak the dialect spoken here. In fact, when I started to meet my wife, who is from here, and I started to talk with her grandma and her relatives, I mean, I had to learn a little bit of the dialect spoken here because that was the only way to interact with them. And I remember that the grandma of my wife tried to translate her sentences in Italian, but the only, I mean, typically the only words that she translated were the easiest one to get. So it was a kind of funny sentences in which, yeah, the different words were, the different lexical items were kept in dialect, and the closer words were instead translated. So anyway, so I start talking about the research, another part of research that Nicola and I are doing in these years. And in this case, I want to focus a little bit on the effects of language bilingual experience. So again, the age of acquisition, the proficiency and exposure. So the effect that these variables have on a particular behavior. That is the behavior behind the way in which we make decisions. So in this series of studies, we will see just some data, some results, but if you're interested in, we can go back later at the end in the question time on this. So in a series of studies, we are trying to understand whether and to what extent this bilingual experience affects the way in which we take decisions. Does it work? Okay. So recent research in the literature on bilingualism has shown, has highlighted that when we take decision, when we make decision in our foreign language, we typically are more rational, less emotional than when we make exactly the same decision in our native language. Probably everyday experience may suggest this. If you think about the situation in which you want to express your feelings or your love, or you want to swear. So in all this situation, we typically use our native language instead of the foreign language, even if the context is a foreign context, let's say. So typically this effect has been highlighted clearly also in the decision. So people tend to be more rational when make decision in the foreign language than when they make exactly the same decision in the native language. This is possible, this has been highlighted in different kind of problems, problems that involve risk decision or moral decisions and other kind of problems. Someone has suggested also that language, for example, for this reason, could be considered a kind of nudge to promote better decision. And with better decision, we mean in this case more rational or more decisions, more utilitarian decision. And I think we will also listen here about this a little bit more later on in this day. So considering this question, this main question, so to what extent taking decision in the foreign language increase our rationality, and to what extent a different kind of experience affect this rationality, we focused on a particular kind of problems, that is the moral problems, the so-called moral problems. Moral problems are problems in which we have to decide whether to cause harm in order to maximize outcomes. What does this mean? We can understand it making an example. In the slide, the picture exemplifies a typical moral problem used in the research, and this is the trolley problem. So imagine that you have a lever in your hand, and there is a train coming on a track. You have two options: not doing anything, so not moving the lever. In this case, the track goes on the track in which it is. And what happens is that the train kills 5 people. The other option is that you move the lever, so in so doing you change the track, so that if you move the lever, the train takes another track. In that case, just one person die. Of course, in this case, you will be directly responsible of that death, but at the same time, you will have the chance to save 5 people, the life of five people. So you have 2 options. One is called deontological. So you avoid to commit any action that kills someone. So you follow your moral principles. The other one is called utilitarian. So you decide to harm someone, to kill someone, but you can save more people. So the outcome is maximized despite the fact that you don't follow your principles, your moral principles. So typically, research has shown that when we use a foreign language, we become more utilitarian and less deontological. We also try to address this question, and especially, of course, we were interested in looking at the difference between foreign language and native language, but also we were interested in trying to understand whether this difference was modulated by the experience that we have in the foreign language, proficiency, exposure, and age of acquisition. So we enrolled almost 200 people in this experiment. Half of them were exposed to this kind of problems, these moral dilemmas, these moral problems in their native language, and half of them in their foreign language. In this case, the foreign language that we considered was English, and the native language was Italian. All of them were adults and living in Italy, in Milan, or around Milan. And we presented these problems, a series of these problems. So I will give you just some sketch of the results, but more or less the findings are similar for all the problems. So first of all, for some of the problems, not all of the problems, we found that indeed, as previous research also shown, taking decision in the foreign language increased the amount of utilitarian choices. So people were more rational, tend to be more utilitarian in the foreign language than the native language. Interestingly, this finding was not always associated with a decrease, in the emotional perception. So when people were asked to evaluate the distress elicited by these moral dilemmas, the answers were similar in native and foreign languages. This suggests that the difference in the increase in the utilitarian choices induced by the foreign language is not only related to the perception of distress. So it's not only related to emotional perception. More interestingly, maybe the difference was also between native and foreign language was also modulated by the bilingual experience. So this is an example of the difference we got. For example, when we look at early and late bilinguals and more or less proficient bilinguals, what we found is that especially for people that learn the second language later on in their life, the more proficient they were, the more similar their choices were to the native language. So the more proficient they were, the more they became deontological, so less rational, like if they were taking decision in the first language. So these results suggest that the bilingual experience, depending on our experience, we can be more or less similar to the native language. So summarizing the findings, the main findings of these studies investigating native and foreign language in relation to decision making, of course, we can say that bilingualism can influence the way in which we make decisions and we take choices, of course. However, it can also happen that in some cases, if we compare the bilinguals with the monolinguals, or the native language with the foreign language, we don't see any difference. But if we take a look to the language experience more in details, and so we take into account proficiency, exposure, and age of acquisition as a continuum, so we can appreciate differences that otherwise don't show up. So I stop sharing because now I leave the floor again to Nicola for the concluding remarks. Nicola, can you hear me?
Yes, no,
Okay.
I could. So I'm up. Can you maybe perhaps
yeah, maybe it's easier. Yes. Okay.
Little slides.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'll just say a few things.
There we are. There we are.
Okay. No, yeah. So we showed just you know, we provided a glimpse of our recent research. As already remarked by Antonella Soraccio, few people today are, you know, strictly monolingual in the sense of having no knowledge or exposure to a second language. And the learning of a second language comes in a variety of forms, in contrast with native language acquisition. And our experience as bilingual shows variability, striking variability, both between speakers and within speakers, that is throughout the lifespan. So we think that measuring, but we think, but this is also a recent trend in bilingualism research, of course. However, we firmly believe that measuring bilingualism as a continuum allows for greater precision in the study of the phenomenon, and it's more ecological. It's a more ecological approach to study it because it reflects the real nature of the phenomenon. So this approach that we applied both to study brain and behavior, and specifically decision making in this case, seems particularly useful to us, at least for understanding the consequences associated with being bilingual. Yeah. Thank you.